My phone vibrated against the center console just as my daughter slammed the back door of my heavy luxury SUV shut. The sticky afternoon heat of Atlanta immediately vanished as the air conditioning kicked into high gear, cooling the leather interior. I glanced down at the glowing screen, expecting a generic reminder about picking up dry cleaning or a schedule update from the school. Instead, a text message from my husband of 10 years stared back at me. I am moving to Italy with Olivia. I moved all our money into my personal account. Good luck paying the bills. I looked up and adjusted the rearview mirror. My 8-year-old daughter, Zuri, was happily digging through her bright pink backpack for her favorite juice box, humming a song from her school choir practice. She was completely oblivious to the fact that her father had just attempted to obliterate our entire existence with a few careless taps on a screen. I did not scream in horror. I did not drop my phone in shock. I did not shed a single tear of betrayal. I simply picked up the device, maintained a perfectly steady breathing rhythm, and typed 3 calm words in reply. Thanks for telling me. I hit send, placed the phone back into the cup holder, and pulled out of the school parking lot. What Jamal did not understand as he sat sipping complimentary champagne in a first-class seat somewhere high over the Atlantic Ocean was that his arrogant little text was the final piece of a beautiful puzzle I had been meticulously assembling for the past 3 months. When he landed in Rome, his luxurious Italian fantasy was going to immediately transform into a terrifying federal nightmare. I kept my eyes on the road long enough to merge into traffic before the meaning of his message settled into my body. 10 years of marriage had been reduced to one line about money and another woman. Jamal did not ask whether Zur had been picked up safely. He did not ask how we would explain his absence to her. He did not even pretend to feel guilty. He wanted me to panic first and calculate later. That was the mistake. At the next red light, I glanced back at Zuri. She had finally found her juice box and was explaining to a stuffed rabbit why the choir teacher had moved her from the second row to the first. I smiled at the right places. I asked whether she remembered her homework folder. I kept my voice steady because her afternoon still deserved to be ordinary. My phone buzzed again. A bank notification this time, transfer initiated. I did not open it until the light changed and I had pulled into a safe parking area 2 blocks away. Jamal's text had been cruelty. The bank notice was evidence. One could hurt me, the other could be documented. I saved a screenshot of both. Then I created a new evidence folder with the date, just as I would for a client whose spouse had decided impulse was stronger than planning. The title was simple: Jamal, Departure and Transfer. My hands did not shake once. Jamal always loved to tell his wealthy friends that my job was painfully boring. He was a highly charismatic sports agent who lived entirely for the thrill of the deal, spending his days rubbing elbows with professional athletes, wealthy executives, and people who thrived on status and public image. He wore custom-tailored suits, drove a car that cost more than most people earn in a decade, and believed that outsmarting someone was the ultimate measure of a person's worth. I am a forensic accountant. I track missing money for high, net-worth clients. I untangle massive webs of corporate fraud, unear deeply hidden offshore accounts, and trace every single penny a person attempts to bury in the dark. The fact that Jamal honestly thought he could hide a financial affair from a woman who literally dissects complex financial crimes for a living was a stunning testament to his staggering arrogance. He assumed I just balanced spreadsheets and paid the household utility bills. He never realized that I see the entire hidden story behind every single transaction. 3 months ago, I noticed a microscopic discrepancy in our joint checking account. It was an $85 charge at a boutique floral shop in a part of the city. Jamal had no reason to visit on a random Tuesday. A trusting wife might have asked him about it over dinner. A jealous wife might have accused him of cheating right then and there. I did neither. I went to work. I started with records I had every legal right to review as a joint account holder. Our bank statements, shared tax documents, household credit reports, property records, and the copies of commission statements Jamal stored on our home system. Within 48 hours, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Quiet cash withdrawals matched nights he claimed he was working. Hidden credit lines appeared beside unexplained hotel charges. I found the apartment lease he had co-signed for a woman named Olivia. I found thousands of dollars hemorrhaging from his personal accounts into illicit online sports betting platforms. Jamal was drowning in gambling debt and building an escape plan around a mistress. Instead of confronting him, I smiled across the dinner table and listened to every lie. And while he slept, I separated my income, preserved the records, and worked with counsel and bank compliance to make sure he could not turn his fraud into my financial ruin. He firmly believed the account he had just tried to drain contained our entire life savings. It did not. Weeks earlier, after documenting the affair, the gambling activity, and several unauthorized transfers, I had restructured our legitimate household funds so my earnings and Zuri's protected savings could not be swept away in one impulsive wire. The account, Jamal could still see, was a controlled operating account with strict international transfer rules and a dual authorization threshold written into the banking agreement. I had also given the bank's compliance department documented notice that Jamal had been moving money toward an overseas destination already connected to transactions under federal review. As I steered onto the highway, I opened my secure banking application. A bright red notification pulsed on the screen. Jamal had initiated a $350,000 international wire to that destination and tried to override the authorization controls. I did not create a fake IRS trap or manufacture a crime. I simply confirmed that the transfer was unauthorized under the account rules and allowed the bank to follow the compliance process already in place. The wire moved into review instead of settling. The destination account was restricted pending verification, and the associated cards Jamal expected to use in Europe were temporarily frozen by the issuing bank. His own documented transfer had created the problem. By the time he stepped off the plane in Rome, the money he bragged about stealing from me would not be available to him at all. The bank's message confirmed the wire was pending. Enhanced review not completed. That difference would matter later. Jamal believed a transfer confirmation screen meant money had arrived. In reality, large international wires moved through layers of compliance, correspondent review, beneficiary verification, and fraud controls. He had spent years mocking systems he never bothered to understand. I called my attorney from the car only after pulling into a grocery store parking lot. He left. I said Italy. Yes. And the transfer held. Good. Do not touch anything that does not require action. Preserve. Do not provoke. That became my rule. I did not call Jamal's bank pretending to be him. I did not empty his personal accounts. I did not cancel cards that were legally his. I protected the funds under my control and let his own institutions respond to his own activity. My attorney also reminded me to separate the marriage from the child. Whatever he has done to you, Zuri still has a father. Do not let his financial misconduct decide every parenting question automatically. I appreciated that reminder even though it hurt. Sweet revenge is easy to write when nobody innocent is standing between the adults. Real life required more discipline. I looked at the school backpack on the rear seat and understood that every choice I made from that moment forward had to survive 2 tests. Would it protect me? And would I still be proud of it when Zuri was old enough to understand? I turned onto our quiet tree-lined street in Buckhead, fully expecting to find an empty house where I could finally begin throwing the remaining garbage he had left behind into the driveway. My brief moment of quiet victory evaporated the second my house came into view. Parked aggressively across the end of my driveway, completely blocking my access to the garage, were 2 vehicles I recognized instantly: a silver Mercedes sedan and a matte black Range Rover. My stomach tightened defensively, but my expression remained an unreadable mask. Patricia, my mother-in-law, stood on my manicured front lawn, her arms crossed tightly over her expensive cashmere wrap. Beside her stood Liam, the wealthy, insufferably condescending white husband of Jamal's sister, Chloe. They were not here to offer comfort to a suddenly single mother. The smug, radiant satisfaction pouring from Patricia's posture told me everything I needed to know. They were here for an ambush. I parked my SUV parallel along the curb, turned off the engine, and turned around to look at my daughter. Zuri, I need you to stay in the car for just a few minutes. Keep the doors locked and watch your tablet. I will be right outside. She nodded happily, already absorbed in her animated cartoon. I took a deep, steadying breath, grabbed my leather handbag, and stepped out into the humid Georgia afternoon. Patricia did not even pretend to offer a polite greeting. She simply extended her manicured hand palm facing up in a demanding gesture. Hand over the keys. My Jamal warned us you would likely make a scene when you finally figured out he left you, but we are not going to tolerate any of your usual dramatic theatrics today. I closed my car door, locking it with a sharp, loud beep of my key fob. I walked slowly up my own driveway, my heels clicking rhythmically and deliberately against the concrete. I looked at Patricia, taking in her perfectly styled hair and the heavy pearl necklace she wore, like a badge of unearned superiority. She had always despised me. I grew up in a hard-working, working-class neighborhood, earning my way through a rigorous college program on pure academic merit and scholarships. Patricia came from generations of Atlanta elite women who judged your entire human worth by your family pedigree and your zip code. She never believed I was good enough for her golden boy son. "What exactly do you think you are doing on my property, Patricia?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm, projecting absolute authority. Patricia's hand remained extended. "Keys, Maya, no." The word was quiet enough that she leaned toward me as if she had misheard. "Excuse me, you are standing on property you do not own asking me for keys. You have no right to possess based on instructions from a man who left the country this afternoon. The answer is no." Her mouth tightened. This is exactly what Jamal warned us about. The theatrics, the hostility. I looked at Liam. "Did he also warn you that my daughter is sitting 10 yards away listening through a closed car window?" Liam glanced toward the SUV. For the first time, embarrassment flickered over his face. Patricia had none. Children need to learn that actions have consequences. I almost smiled. For once, we agree. I stepped sideways so my body remained between them and Zuri. "Whatever adult argument you came here to have, you will not stage it around my child. You will not touch my vehicle. You will not approach her door. And you will not enter the house." Patricia gave a contemptuous laugh. "Still, issuing orders like your little accounting office makes you important. My profession has nothing to do with this boundary. It has everything to do with why I know exactly how valuable a documented boundary becomes." Later, Liam stepped forward, adjusting the cuffs of his custom-tailored suit. He had always treated me with a thinly veiled condescension, treating our family gatherings like charitable visits to the less fortunate. He pulled a thick, folded legal document from his inside jacket pocket and slapped it hard against the windshield of my car. "It is not your property anymore," my Liam said, a nasty, victorious smirk spreading across his face. "Jamal transferred the deed to me yesterday morning to cover some substantial business debts he owed my firm before he relocated overseas. You have exactly 24 hours to pack your trash and get off my property." Patricia stepped closer, her expensive floral perfume cloying and heavy in the warm air. She looked me up and down with an expression of pure, unadulterated disgust. "You never belonged in this family, Maya. You are just a boring number cruncher who dragged my brilliant son down with your complete lack of ambition. Jamal deserves a woman who truly understands his world, someone who can elevate his social status, not anchor him to mediocrity. Olivia is a sophisticated woman. She comes from a very good family. Jamal is finally correcting the biggest mistake of his life. You should be eternally grateful he tolerated you as long as he did. Now be a good girl. Take your daughter and go back to whatever pathetic neighborhood you crawled out of." I looked at the folded document pinned securely beneath my windshield wiper. I looked at Liam, who was already pulling out his phone, likely to call a premium locksmith to change my locks the moment the 24-hour notice expired. I looked at Patricia, whose face was twisted with vindictive, joyful cruelty. They genuinely believed they had won. They believed Jamal had successfully ruined me, leaving me homeless and penniless, while he lived out a romantic fantasy across the globe. They thought I was weak. They thought I was ignorant. I reached out and pulled the heavy document from the windshield. I unfolded the thick paper. It was a standard quit-claim deed bearing Jamal's sprawling signature attempting to transfer the absolute ownership of the property located at this exact address to Liam's corporate holding company. I read the dense legal jargon, the freshly notarized stamps, the official-looking state seals they had likely paid a massive premium to expedite. I read it slowly from top to bottom, absorbing their entire strategy. And then I did the last thing they expected. I threw my head back and laughed. It was not a hysterical laugh or a nervous chuckle. It was a genuine, deep, chilling sound of pure amusement that echoed down the quiet suburban street. I examined the deed the way I would examine a suspect invoice. The paper was expensive. The formatting was convincing. The notary block looked clean at first glance. That was exactly why ordinary people could be intimidated by documents they did not understand. But the legal description referenced my property, while the grantor line named Jamal personally. No chain of title was attached. No operating consent from my LLC existed. The supposed consideration referred to a debt schedule I had never seen. Liam mistook my silence for fear. "You see," he said, "completely valid." I looked at him. Where did the notary witness Jamal sign this? He hesitated. That is irrelevant. It becomes relevant when the signer was already preparing to leave the country and the grantor did not own the asset. Patricia rolled her eyes. You always hide behind technicalities. Ownership is not a technicality, Patricia. I folded the deed carefully along its original crease, and this is no longer your document. You handed it to the legal owner while demanding possession. I am preserving it. Why are you laughing? Patricia snapped her smug expression, faltering for a fraction of a second, confusion bleeding into her voice. This is a legal eviction notice. You have no money. You have no husband, and by tomorrow afternoon, you will have no home. There is absolutely nothing funny about your tragic situation. I stopped laughing and fixed my gaze directly on Liam. The amusement vanished entirely from my face, replaced by a cold, calculating stare that made him instinctively take a half-step backward on the concrete. You really should have hired a much better real estate attorney, Liam, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous even pitch. Or at the very least, you should have run a basic county title search before you actively helped your brother-in-law attempt to commit blatant property fraud. Liam scoffed loudly, crossing his arms over his chest to feign confidence. The deed is perfectly legal. Jamal was the primary breadwinner of this household. It was his house to transfer to settle his accounts. Jamal never owned this house, I stated clearly, letting the heavy words hang in the humid air. He never contributed a single dollar to the down payment. He never paid a single month of the mortgage. When we bought this property 7 years ago, I did not put his name on the deed. In fact, I did not even put my own personal name on the public registry. I pulled my phone from my purse and rapidly opened the county tax assessor's secure portal. I turned the bright screen so both Liam and Patricia could clearly see the official government record. This property is exclusively owned by a blind limited liability company registered in the state of Delaware, an LLC of which I am the sole member and manager. Jamal's signature on that piece of paper you are holding is entirely worthless. He tried to give you a house he never possessed. The county record loaded slowly enough for Patricia to regain some of her confidence. Then the ownership line appeared. My LLC acquisition date, 7 years earlier. Jamal's name, nowhere. I enlarged the screen. Patricia stared. Liam took one step closer, reading the parcel number twice. You could have changed that online, he said. County records do not work like a social media profile. I opened the recorded deed image. There was my LLC acquisition, the closing date, and the title history. Then I opened the operating record showing my authority as sole member and manager. I had bought the property before Jamal and I married because my first major recovery bonus gave me enough for the down payment. Jamal moved in after the wedding. He preferred to tell people we had bought the house together because it sounded better at parties. I never corrected him because ownership was recorded whether he understood it or not. That silence had protected my privacy. Now it protected my home. I saved a photograph of the false deed in Liam's hands and emailed it to my attorney before he could decide to tear it up or take it back. Evidence first, argument second. Liam snatched the paper from his own hand, staring wildly at the forged deed, and then looked back at my glowing phone screen. The color rapidly drained from his face as his business mind processed the severe legal reality of what I had just shown him. I knew exactly what it meant. He had actively conspired to file a fraudulent property transfer, an act that carried devastating legal consequences. If you knowingly try to record or use that document to dispossess me, you are walking straight into criminal exposure. Liam, I continued, stepping closer without raising my voice. The county record already shows Jamal had no title to convey. A forged transfer instrument does not become legitimate because it has an expensive seal. I will preserve the deed, the messages, and the metadata. Then let the proper authorities decide what charges fit. Your clients may be very interested in that explanation. Patricia let out a breathless gasp, her hand flying to clutch her pearl necklace. You are lying, Jamal said. This was his house. He said he handled all the family finances. Jamal lied to you, Patricia. Just like he lied to me, I said, turning my attention back to my horrified mother-in-law. He also told you he was a wildly successful sports agent, didn't he? Did he happen to mention the $300,000 he currently owes to an illegal sports betting syndicate operating out of the city? Did he mention that your precious new daughter-in-law, Olivia, was the one helping him hide his massive gambling debts from dangerous people? Patricia's mouth opened and closed silently. The impenetrable fortress of her arrogance was beginning to crumble rapidly under the weight of hard, undeniable facts. She looked at Liam for support, but Liam was frantically staring at his phone, his thumb swiping aggressively across the screen as he desperately tried to verify my claims about the LLC. He knew I was right. I am a forensic accountant. I do not make mistakes with paperwork. Right at that precise moment, cutting through the tense, suffocating silence of my driveway, my phone vibrated in my hand. A specialized high-pitched alert tone rang out, one I had specifically programmed for a very particular global event. I glanced down at the screen. It was an international banking notification followed immediately by a global flight tracking update. Delta Flight 284 had officially landed at Leonardo da Vinci International Airport in Rome. I looked up at Patricia, a slow, predatory smile spreading across my face. "It seems Jamal has finally arrived in Italy," I announced, tapping the screen to answer the incoming international call that was already lighting up my phone. "Let us find out how much he is enjoying his romantic getaway." The international number flashed across my screen before the flight tracking alert had even disappeared. Patricia leaned toward me instinctively, and Liam stopped pretending to study the county record on his phone. I tapped the speaker icon. "Maya, what did you do?" Jamal's voice exploded through the phone so loudly that even Zuri, still safely inside the locked SUV with her headphones on, looked up through the glass. Behind him, I could hear airport announcements in Italian, the rolling thunder of luggage wheels and a woman's sharp voice demanding something about a hotel car. "Good afternoon, Jamal," I said. "Or I suppose it is evening where you are. Do not play games with me. My card just got declined at the hotel desk. The driver says the reservation deposit did not clear. The bank app is showing a restriction on everything. Fix it!" Patricia's posture changed instantly. 10 minutes earlier, she had been certain her son was gliding into a glamorous new life, while I packed boxes on the curb. Now she was listening to him panic in a foreign airport. Olivia's voice cut across the background. "Jamal, you told me the suite was prepaid. I am not standing in this terminal all night because your wife is having a tantrum." I almost laughed at the word wife. Jamal had left the country, tried to drain an account, and texted me that I was on my own. Yet somehow I was still responsible for the comfort of his mistress. "I did not touch your cards," I said. "You initiated an international wire from an account with transfer controls you were not authorized to override." The bank stopped settlement and placed related activity under review. That is what compliance departments do when somebody tries to move hundreds of thousands of dollars into a destination already linked to suspicious activity. There was a stunned pause. "You set me up," he hissed. "No, you sent the wire. You chose the destination. You ignored the authorization rules. I documented what was already happening and protected the money that actually belongs to me and our daughter." He lowered his voice, suddenly aware that other travelers might be listening. "Put the money back right now. I have expenses here. You told me you moved our money into your personal account and wished me luck paying the bills. I assumed you had planned for your own expenses." Liam stared at me. His mouth tightened because he understood exactly what I was doing, refusing to rescue a man from a problem created by his own transaction. Jamal started shouting again. He threatened to call his bank to sue me to tell every client in Atlanta that I had manipulated him. Then his anger cracked. For one brief second, I heard fear. "Maya, I need access to something. Anything. Olivia is standing here. The hotel wants a deposit. The airline lounge already closed. You cannot leave me stranded." Patricia finally broke her silence. "Jamal, baby, it is me. What is happening? Mom, why are you with her?" Patricia looked at me as if I had forced her into the conversation. Liam tried to wave her quiet, but the damage was done. "We came to secure the house for you," she said quickly. "Liam has the deed." The line went silent. "Jamal," I said softly, "would you like to explain to your mother why the man beside her is holding a deed to a property you never owned?" I heard a curse under his breath. Then Olivia demanded to know what house we were talking about. Jamal told her to shut up. She responded by accusing him of lying about his assets. Their perfect European beginning was already splitting at the seams less than an hour after landing. I ended the call before he could reorganize his lies. Patricia stared at me. "You embarrassed him on purpose." "No, Patricia. He embarrassed himself. There is a difference." I looked at Liam. "Move your vehicles off my driveway. You have 5 minutes." If you try to record that deed, change a lock, or enter my house without permission, I will treat it exactly as the attempted property grab it is." His face hardened, but the confidence was gone. He folded the deed and shoved it into his jacket. For the first time, he looked less like a wealthy strategist, and more like a man who had accepted paperwork from a desperate relative without checking whether any of it was real. I walked back to the SUV and opened Zuri's door. She slipped her hand into mine. "Is Dad coming home?" she asked. "Not tonight, baby." She looked toward Patricia and Liam. "Are they mad at you?" "They are mad because they thought I would be scared." Zuri considered that with the serious expression, "Only an 8-year-old can manage." "Are you scared?" I looked at my daughter, then at the house. Jamal had tried to give away as if my life were inventory. "No," I said. "I am paying attention." Before Liam reached his car, I asked one last question. "Did Jamal tell you why he needed the house transferred?" He stopped. Patricia answered instead. "Business debts?" "What business debts?" "None of your concern." That was exactly the problem. Everyone had been acting on Jamal's version of events without asking whether the money, property, or debt existed where he said it did. Liam turned back. "He owed my company. That is all you need to know. Then you should have a signed debt agreement." His expression stayed still but not comfortably. "Send it to my attorney," I said. "If the debt is legitimate, it can be addressed through legitimate channels. A forged deed is not a legitimate channel." Patricia shook her head. "You think everything is a transaction?" "No. I think transactions leave records. That is why people who lie about money eventually run into paperwork." Liam said nothing. I watched him leave, knowing I had just learned something important. The deed was not merely family intimidation. Liam believed or wanted me to believe that Jamal owed him substantial money. If that debt was real, it connected two men who had spent years pretending their finances were completely separate. Behind us, Liam started his Range Rover. Patricia climbed into the Mercedes without another word. Their cars pulled away from my curb, and the driveway opened like a door back into my own life. Once Zuri was inside doing homework at the kitchen island, I returned Jamal's call from my home office. I did not put this one on speaker. Whatever happened next involved adult consequences, and my daughter had already been exposed to enough of his recklessness. He answered on the first ring. "Tell me how to fix it," he said. His tone had changed from fury to negotiation. Jamal had spent his career reading leverage. When intimidation failed, he became charming. When charm failed, he became practical. He still had not reached remorse. I opened the bank's secure message center and read the compliance notice again before answering. "The transfer is under review because you attempted to move $350,000 internationally after the account had been restricted to dual authorization. The receiving account is also connected to transactions already subject to federal scrutiny. I cannot simply press a button and release it. You are my wife. Authorize it. You texted me that you were moving to Italy with another woman and had taken all our money. Do not invoke the marriage now because you need a signature." His breathing became harsh. "The money is mine, too. Some of the household operating funds were marital. My earnings and Zuri's protected money were not. That is why I separated them weeks ago. The account you tried to empty contains documented funds and a clear authorization structure. You knew the transfer limit. You approved those bank forms yourself and made jokes about how boring they were. That silenced him. It had always fascinated me how men like Jamal treated paperwork as beneath them until the paperwork became a wall they could not climb. He remembered signing the updated controls because I had placed the forms beside his breakfast 3 weeks earlier. He had skimmed them, signed where I pointed, and told me he was late for a client meeting. He assumed the changes were routine. They were routine. That was the beauty of it. I had not forged anything, concealed anything, or created a fictional account. I had simply used legitimate protections available to a joint account holder after discovering a pattern of unauthorized transfers. "So, what happens now?" he asked. "The bank reviews the wire. If investigators request records, the bank provides them. If the receiving account is restricted by a federal order, the transfer remains frozen until the proper authority releases it. I do not control that process. This is insane. No. Moving money while fleeing the country with a mistress was insane." Olivia shouted something behind him. Jamal covered the microphone, but I still heard enough. "You said you were liquid. You said the Atlanta house was yours. You said your wife did not know anything." Jamal returned to the line. "Maya, listen to me. Call the bank and tell them the transfer was approved. Tell them we planned it together. That would be false. It would save our family. Our family is doing homework 10 feet from me. You are standing in Rome with Olivia." His silence lasted several seconds. Then he tried a different tactic. He said he could come home. He said Italy had been a mistake. He said stress, gambling pressure, and Patricia's expectations had pushed him into choices he did not understand. He even said Olivia meant nothing. I listened without interrupting. 3 months earlier, those words might have wounded me. Now they sounded like entries in a reconciliation statement. Excuses on one side, consequences on the other. No balance between them. "Do not come home because your cards failed," I said. "Come home if your attorney tells you to. Come home if your daughter needs to see you under conditions that are safe for her, but do not come home expecting me to erase what you did." He swore at me and hung up. 10 minutes later, my bank's private client team called. The representative confirmed the outgoing wire was still held. She also confirmed that no one had accessed my protected accounts and that my prior fraud documentation was attached to the file. I asked her to preserve every login authorization attempt, phone call, and beneficiary change connected to Jamal. I was not trying to manufacture a criminal case. I was building a clean record. That distinction mattered to me. Outside the office window, evening settled over Buckhead. The neighborhood lights came on one by one, warm and expensive, and deceptively peaceful. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "You have humiliated my son enough. Release his money, or I will make sure everyone in this city knows what kind of woman you are." I read it twice, then I took a screenshot, saved it to the same evidence folder as the deed, and locked my phone. After the call with Jamal, I made a second list. Not of what I wanted to do, of what I refused to do. I would not drain accounts just because I could. I would not use Zuri as leverage. I would not contact Olivia. I would not threaten Jamal's clients. I would not take confidential information from my employer to solve a personal problem. The list looked almost absurd beside everything he had done. But discipline is easiest to admire when nobody is testing it. I had spent years teaching junior accountants that a fraud investigation becomes useless the moment the investigator contaminates the evidence. The same principle applied to my marriage. If Jamal's actions became a legal matter, I wanted every lawyer, judge, investigator, and future version of my daughter to be able to see one clean line between his choices and mine. That night, I changed the password on my personal email, removed Jamal from the Household Utility Administration, where I was the sole account holder, and left everything else untouched unless my attorney advised otherwise. I slept badly, but I slept without wondering whether revenge had made me reckless. Patricia had just announced the next phase herself. Rome did not become romantic for Jamal. I knew that not because I was stalking him, but because he called me 6 times over the next 12 hours and left a different version of the disaster in every voicemail. In the first, Olivia was still in the background yelling about the hotel reservation. Jamal told me the front desk had refused to accept another card because the replacement card was tied to the same flagged account. He accused me of ruining a reservation he had promised would be the beginning of their new life. In the second, his voice was lower. He said Olivia had taken a taxi without him. In the third, he demanded that I wire him $5,000 for emergency expenses. In the fourth, he offered to sign something giving me temporary control of the house if I released the transfer. The house he had already tried to give to Liam. By the fifth voicemail, he had stopped pretending the situation was under control. "Maya, I am sleeping in the terminal," he said. "Olivia took one of the bags. She says she is calling her own family. I need you to answer." I deleted nothing. I saved every message. The next morning, I took Zuri to school exactly as I always did. I packed her lunch, reminded her about choir practice, and kissed her forehead at the curb. She asked if Dad was still in Italy. "For now," I said. She nodded and went inside. Children understand instability long before adults admit it exists. What they need is not every ugly fact. They need one reliable person who makes the morning happen anyway. I arrived at my firm 20 minutes later wearing a navy suit and carrying the same leather portfolio I had brought to client meetings for years. I expected questions. Atlanta's financial community was too small and too gossip-driven for Jamal's disappearance to remain private. I did not expect my access badge to flash amber at the executive floor. The receptionist looked uncomfortable. "The managing partner wants to see you before you go to your office." I thanked her and walked down the hall. The managing partner was seated behind a broad desk with the blinds half closed. My department file rested in front of him. Beside it was a printed email chain thick enough to make my stomach tighten. "Sit down, Maya." I sat. He did not waste time. I received 3 calls before 8 this morning. One from a Sterling family representative, one from a long-time referral source, and one from a board member. They all asked whether you are involved in a domestic financial dispute with your husband. I kept my face neutral. My marriage is ending. My husband attempted an unauthorized international transfer and left the country. I have preserved records and engaged counsel. My professional work is separate from that. He rubbed his forehead. The problem is that your mother-in-law and Liam are telling people a different story. They say you froze Jamal's money to punish him for leaving. They are describing you as unstable, vindictive, and financially abusive. Liam told one client that you used confidential forensic tools to target your own family. That last allegation struck exactly where he intended it to. My reputation was built on trust. A forensic accountant who misused access for personal revenge was finished. Everything I reviewed relating to Jamal came from accounts I legally own or jointly hold public records and household records available to me as a spouse. I said I did not access client systems. I did not use firm credentials. I can document that. I believe you. The managing partner said, but belief is not the same as risk management. There it was. He slid a memo across the desk. Pending an internal review. You are being removed from the Sterling account. The words landed harder than Jamal's text had. Sterling was my largest client. I had spent 4 years building that relationship. The annual bonus attached to the account paid for a significant portion of Zuri's future planning. Losing the assignment did not make me poor, but it made the cost of Patricia's smear campaign real. How long? I asked. I do not know, and my bonus suspended until the review is complete. I picked up the memo and read it carefully. I could have argued. I could have demanded loyalty. Instead, I asked for the specific allegations in writing the scope of the internal review and confirmation that no one would access my personal family records without appropriate process. The managing partner's expression shifted slightly. He had expected emotion. He got procedure. As I stood to leave, he said, "Maya, for what it is worth, your work here has always been exceptional. Then treat the review like an audit," I replied. "Follow the records." I walked back to the elevator with my spine straight. My phone vibrated before the doors closed. A message from Liam filled the screen. "Give Jamal his money back or you will not work in this city again." I stared at the sentence until the elevator reached my floor. Then I smiled. The managing partner slid another page toward me. This one listed the specific client concern. Alleged misuse of confidential data for domestic retaliation. I read it twice. Who used that phrase? He hesitated. Liam, of course. I asked whether he had provided any example of client information I supposedly misused. No. Whether he had identified any database. No. Whether anyone had checked my access logs before removing me? Not yet. I looked up. Then the review began with punishment, instead of evidence. His face tightened. It began with risk containment. Those are not the same thing. The exchange mattered because it forced the firm to document its own process. If I was going to be reviewed, the review would leave records too. Before I left his office, I requested a copy of the firm's policy on conflicts, access logs, and temporary reassignment. I also asked that my credentials be preserved exactly as they were so no one could later suggest I had deleted or altered activity. He stared at me. "You really are treating this like a forensic case." It is one now. Liam had just put the smear campaign in writing. By noon, the whispers had become a campaign. A country club friend of Patricia's called one of my former clients to ask whether I was having an episode. A woman from a charity board I had audited 2 years earlier sent me a carefully worded message saying she hoped I was getting support during my marital crisis. A referral partner candled lunch and claimed a scheduling conflict, then posted a photograph from another lunch 30 minutes later. Patricia and Liam knew exactly how reputation worked in our world. They did not need a public press conference. They only needed to contaminate the first impression before I could speak. I did not post a defense online. I did not write a long message explaining my marriage. I documented. Every text went into a folder. Every client who repeated a specific allegation received a short professional reply asking where they had heard it. Every answer led back toward the same cluster of names. The managing partner called again late that afternoon. Sterling has asked that you remain off the account until the family dispute is resolved. I leaned back in my chair. Did Sterling identify any deficiency in my work? Number, any complaint about accuracy, ethics, missed deadlines, or confidentiality? No, then please put that in the review file. Maya, I am not asking you to restore me today. I am asking you to distinguish reputational noise from performance. There was a pause. Fair enough. When the call ended, I opened the memo confirming the temporary reassignment. I read the line about compensation twice. The bonus attached to Sterling would not accrue while I was off the account. For the first time since Jamal's text, anger arrived without a clean place to put it. He had tried to steal money. Liam had tried to steal my house. Patricia had tried to steal my reputation. And now, people who knew my work were willing to place me on a shelf because a wealthy family told an uglier story first. I closed my eyes for 5 seconds. Then I opened them and returned to the only language that had never lied to me. Numbers. The forged deed Liam had brought to my driveway named his corporate holding company as transferee. I searched the public corporate registry. The company was attached to 3 other entities. One had a recent UCC filing showing secured debt. Another had been sued by a vendor for non-payment. A third had a registered address matching an office suite. Jamal visited twice during the period he told me he was meeting athletes. I built a timeline. I did not access Liam's bank account. I did not hack his email. I used public filings records already present in my marital documents. The forged deed he had physically delivered to me and transaction data from accounts to which I was legally a party. A pattern emerged. Payments moved from Jamal's personal account into an entity controlled by Liam. Within days, amounts of almost the same size moved toward a foreign account. Several transfers were described as consulting fees, even though I could find no corresponding contract in Jamal's records. Then I found the familiar name, Olivia, not in a secret database. In a lease guarantee PDF Jamal had stored in our shared household folder, the same folder we used for taxes and insurance. Her apartment payments were made through a management company. The dates matched transfers originating from a Liam-controlled entity within 48 hours. I printed the schedule and laid it beside the forged deed. This was no longer just a cheating husband and a hostile in-law. There was money moving between them. I called my own attorney, not my employer's legal department. I explained the forged deed, the suspicious transfers, Jamal's attempted international wire, and Liam's written threat to destroy my career. Do not contact them about the financial pattern yet. My attorney said, preserve everything. We will separate what is civil, what belongs with bank compliance, and what may need a criminal referral. That answer calmed me. I wanted consequences, not contaminated evidence. At 4:30, the managing partner sent a formal notice confirming I was temporarily removed from Sterling pending review. I was still employed. I still had other clients, but the message was clear. Liam had succeeded in creating damage. My phone buzzed again. Another text from him. Hope the free time helps you reconsider. I saved that too. Then I opened a blank spreadsheet and typed one sentence at the top. By evening, I could see the architecture of the smear. Patricia supplied morality. Liam supplied professional danger. Jamal supplied victimhood from Rome. Each story reinforced the others. Patricia told people I was cold and vindictive. Liam told them I was an ethical risk. Jamal told them I had trapped him financially. None of them needed to prove the whole lie if each person contributed one believable piece. That was sophisticated even if they did not realize it. I built a simple chart with names, dates, and repeated phrases. Financial abuse, unstable, misused confidential access. Would not let Jamal control his own money. Patterns matter in speech just as they matter in ledgers. When the same unusual phrase appears in 3 places, the source is rarely coincidence. My attorney told me not to send cease and desist letters yet. Let them keep talking long enough to establish the pattern, she said. That advice was emotionally difficult and strategically sound. Sometimes the hardest part of defending yourself is allowing a liar enough room to finish the sentence. If Liam wants to turn my career into a battlefield, I am going to make sure every weapon I use is legal, documented, and impossible to explain away. The loss of Sterling changed my week immediately. My calendar opened up in long blocks where there should have been client meetings. My expected year-end compensation dropped on the internal dashboard. A junior colleague quietly asked whether I was all right, then looked away before I could answer. I hated that part more than the money. Patricia's story had made me something people whispered about. At home, I refused to let any of it reach Zuri. We made spaghetti. She practiced spelling words at the kitchen table. I helped her choose a costume for the winter choir concert. After she went to bed, I returned to the dining room and covered the table with documents. The first stack contained Jamal's gambling transactions. The second contained the deed. The third contained the transfers touching Liam's entities. The fourth contained the messages threatening my job. I did not yet have enough to accuse Liam of money laundering or fraud. I had enough to know I needed to keep digging. My attorney obtained certified copies of the county title record and the attempted transfer paperwork Liam had prepared. The signatures were inconsistent. The notarial language referenced Jamal as grantor, even though the title record showed my LLC as owner. More troubling, the document packet included a debt schedule allegedly supporting the transfer. One of the listed debts pointed to Liam's corporate company. That gave me another lawful trail to follow. I pulled court records, liens, vendor, complaints, and public financing notices tied to his business. The image he projected at family dinners, private equity genius, disciplined executive, sophisticated investor, collapsed quickly under public documents. His company was overleveraged. Several debts had been extended more than once. Vendors complained about late payment. A civil filing referenced undisclosed affiliate transactions. I compared those dates to Jamal's personal withdrawals. The numbers aligned too often to be coincidence. Near midnight, I found an archived copy of a tax work paper Jamal had asked me to review 2 years earlier. At the time, he had called it one of Liam's little side investments. Attached to the work paper was a schedule of intercomp transfers and an offshore beneficiary account. The beneficiary name was not Liam, it was Olivia. I sat perfectly still. The first time I saw her name, I believed she was simply the woman Jamal had chosen over his family. Now, her name was sitting inside Liam's financial orbit years before Jamal's affair began. I checked the dates against the apartment lease. Liam's company had been making payments connected to Olivia before Jamal ever started visiting that neighborhood. A different kind of betrayal emerged. I did not celebrate it. Chloe was Liam's wife. She had never treated me warmly, but she was still about to learn that her husband's secrets extended far beyond defending Jamal. The next morning, my attorney and I met in a small conference room away from my firm. I showed her the public filings and the marital records. She read silently. "This is enough to justify a formal referral for review," she said. "It is not enough for you to declare a crime in public." "I know. Good. Because if you are right, the authorities will want clean provenance for every document." We prepared a chronology. The forged deed went into one packet. The suspicious transfers went into another. The threats to my job stayed in a civil file. The gambling evidence belonged with Jamal's transfer history. I left the meeting without feeling victorious. I felt organized. That afternoon, Jamal finally called from a number I did not recognize. "I am coming home," he said. "How the consulate helped me resolve the travel issue. I have a flight." That was not an answer, but I did not need the details. An airline itinerary notification later confirmed he had secured a return route through official assistance after being unable to continue the trip as planned. He tried to sound powerful. "Mom is hosting dinner Sunday. Family will be there. We are going to clear this up." "Clear? What up?" "What you did to me." I almost admired the commitment to delusion. Then a separate message from Patricia arrived. "Sunday, 6 Liam and Chloe's house. We are going to explain the truth to everyone. Do not come unless you are prepared to apologize." I stared at the invitation. That was not an invitation. My attorney had just told me the financial packet was ready for referral. Jamal had just announced a stage, and Patricia, with perfect arrogance, had filled the audience. I also reviewed the household tax returns Jamal and I had filed together. One deduction caught my attention. Consulting services, L Holdings. The amount was far larger than anything Jamal had ever mentioned. I pulled the supporting PDF from the tax archive. The invoice described athlete brand strategy. Jamal had no athletes connected to Liam's company. The payment date landed 3 days before one of Jamal's largest gambling transfers. I added it to the timeline with a question mark, not an accusation. Then I noticed something else. The invoice numbering did not match the numbering on Liam's publicly filed vendor dispute. Different format, different sequence, possibly nothing. Possibly a fabricated invoice used to explain a transfer. I sent it to my attorney. She replied with one sentence. Preserve the original metadata and do not contact Liam. I smiled despite myself. We spoke the same language. I knew exactly where the next accounting would happen. Saturday became preparation day. I did not spend it rehearsing insults. I spent it verifying every line. The gambling spreadsheet showed the original amount, the withdrawals, the payment processors, and the dates. Jamal began moving commissions away from the household. I removed anything I could not independently support. The deed slide contained the certified county record beside the forged quitclaim instrument Liam had handed me in the driveway. I highlighted the ownership mismatch and nothing more. I did not label him a felon on the slide. Facts were stronger than adjectives. The Olivia slide was the most delicate. I built it from records already in my possession or obtained through legitimate public channels. Liam's entity payment schedule preserved in Jamal's old tax file. Olivia's lease documents in the shared household records, transfers reflected in Jamal's account, and dates from travel receipts he had left behind. The pattern began before Jamal's affair. Liam's money touched Olivia's life first. What it meant emotionally would be Chloe's decision. What it meant legally would be someone else's. My attorney reviewed the deck and removed 2 phrases that sounded like conclusions rather than facts. Good forensic work is disciplined enough to leave room for the truth to be ugly without exaggeration. The final item was Patricia's voicemail. I found it on Jamal's old tablet, the one he left charging in our home office when he fled. The device was still connected to the shared family backup he had used for years. I did not search through unrelated private messages. I preserved the specific voicemail because the notification preview referenced Zur's account. The recording was less than 40 seconds. Patricia's voice was unmistakable. Move the college money before Maya starts asking questions. You are Zuri's father. You can replenish it later. Get yourself settled first, then deal with the child account after Italy. Maya always figures things out eventually, so do it before she has time to stop you. I had listened to it once. Once was enough. Zuri's college account had not been drained because I had already moved it into a protected structure that required my authorization. Jamal had tried to access it anyway. That was the part that ended any lingering doubt I had about exposing what happened. He had not merely left me. He had tried to finance his escape with our daughter's future. By Sunday afternoon, my attorney confirmed the relevant financial package had been transmitted to the appropriate authorities for review. She gave me a direct instruction. Do not tell the family there will be arrests. Do not promise anything. You are not law enforcement. Present only what you can prove and leave if the situation becomes unsafe. I agreed. At 5:30, I dressed in a fitted cream suit, low heels, and the diamond studs I had bought myself after my first major recovery case. I did not dress to intimidate. I dressed to remember who I was before Jamal's family spent a week trying to define me. Zuri was staying safely away from the dinner. I told her I had an adult meeting and that I would be back later. Are you seeing Dad? She asked. Yes, tell him I got an A on my spelling test. The simplicity of the request almost broke me. I promised I would. Then I drove toward Liam and Chloe's gated community with the flash drive in my handbag and a printed backup in the trunk. Patricia believed she was hosting Jamal's restoration. She had invited relatives, business contacts, country club friends, and people whose opinions she treasured. She thought the room would isolate me. Before leaving for the dinner, I duplicated the presentation onto 2 encrypted drives. One remained with my attorney. One stayed in my bag. I also printed a 1-page source index identifying where every document came from, joint bank statements, county records, shared tax files, public corporate filings, text messages sent directly to me, and the deed Liam had physically delivered. That page was less dramatic than the evidence. It was more important. Anyone can project a shocking number on a television. Forensic work requires provenance. I wanted the family to know that if they challenged one item, I could show exactly how it entered the record. I also disabled remote access to my home office before leaving. Jamal had once had a household login. I no longer knew what credentials he might have shared. The security step was not revenge. It was the financial equivalent of changing the locks after someone had already tried to give away the house. I also checked the timeline against Zur's schedule. That may sound unrelated to a financial presentation, but it mattered to me. The Rome transfer had been initiated while I was in the school pickup line. Patricia and Liam had arrived at my house while Zuri was still in the car. Jamal had attempted access to her college account while planning to disappear. Every major decision the adults made had treated my daughter as background scenery. I refused to do the same. Before leaving for the dinner, I called Zuri's school and confirmed that only I could authorize any change to pickup or emergency contacts until the temporary parenting agreement was in place. I notified the security company at my house that no family member was permitted inside without my direct approval. I told my attorney where I would be and when I expected to leave. None of those steps looked dramatic. That was the point. Real protection rarely looks like a television showdown. It looks like updated forms, documented instructions, verified access, and one adult thinking 3 moves ahead while everyone else is busy performing. Then I checked the flash drive again. The family wanted spectacle. I was bringing structure. Instead, she had assembled the exact audience that would finally see the books. The gate recognized my license plate before I had time to lower the window. That small detail told me how certain Patricia had been that I would obey her warning and stay away. No one had removed me from the household guest list. The guard arm lifted, and I drove through the stone entrance toward the largest house on the cul-de-sac. Liam and Chloe's mansion glowed like a campaign headquarters. Cars lined both sides of the circular drive. Through the tall front windows, I could see a dining room full of people in dark suits, jewel-toned dresses, and winter coats folded over chairs. Patricia had not arranged a family conversation. She had assembled a jury. I parked at the edge of the drive and sat for a moment with both hands on the steering wheel. My attorney's instruction repeated in my head. Facts. No threats. Leave if it becomes unsafe. I checked the flash drive in my bag, then stepped out. A cousin opened the front door before I rang. Her smile vanished the moment she recognized me. Maya, good evening. She looked over her shoulder toward the dining room as if deciding whether to warn everyone. I saved her the trouble and walked in. The smell of roast lamb, expensive candles, and red wine filled the foyer. Someone had put on soft jazz. Every surface looked staged for a magazine photograph. Then the room noticed me. Conversations stopped in layers. First the people nearest the hallway, then the table, then Jamal. He stood at the far end of the dining room, wearing a navy blazer and an expression of carefully constructed injury. His time in Rome showed in the shadows beneath his eyes, but Patricia had restored the costume haircut, clean shirt, expensive watch glass of wine in his hand. For a man who had slept on airport luggage 3 nights earlier, he had recovered remarkably fast once he reached his mother's protection. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. Patricia rose from her chair so quickly the linen napkin fell from her lap. "I told you not to come unless you were prepared to apologize." I looked around the room. There were relatives who had attended our wedding, business contacts who had praised Jamal's charm, 2 of Patricia's country club friends, a former client of mine who immediately looked down at his plate. The smear campaign had an audience. I set my handbag on an empty chair. "You invited people here to discuss my marriage and my finances," I said. I thought accuracy might be useful. Liam stood beside the fireplace. His face tightened. "You are not welcome in my home." That was almost funny coming from the man who had arrived at my home with a forged deed. I did not say it yet. Chloe sat beside him, perfectly styled, one hand wrapped around the stem of a wine glass. She looked exhausted rather than hostile. Jamal stepped around the table. "Leave, Maya." I stayed where I was. "Did Zuri send a message?" he asked, lowering his voice just enough to perform concerned fatherhood for the room. She got an A on her spelling test. His expression flickered. "Tell her I am proud of her. You can tell her when an appropriate parenting plan is in place." Patricia made a dramatic sound of outrage. "There you hear that she is withholding his own child." "This is what I have been trying to explain." I turned to the room. "No one has been asked to believe me tonight. That is the good news." Liam laughed once. "What exactly is that supposed to mean?" "It means I brought records." Patricia pointed toward the foyer. "Security will remove you if you do not leave now." I glanced toward the hall. The hired security men at the front had begun moving closer, clearly unsure whether this was a domestic argument or something they were expected to end. I raised both hands slightly. "I am not here to fight anyone. I will leave if the homeowner formally revokes my access. But before I do, there are documents in this room that directly involve the people who have been telling clients I committed financial abuse. There are documents in this room that directly involve the people who have been telling clients I committed financial abuse." Liam's face changed. He knew I was referring to his threat. Jamal moved closer. You stole my money. That is the only document anyone needs. I opened my handbag and removed the flash drive. No, Jamal. You tried to move controlled funds into an overseas account while abandoning your daughter. The bank stopped the transfer because of your transaction, not because I stole anything, someone at the table whispered. Patricia rushed to fill the silence. Maya has always been cold, clinical. She does not understand family pressure. Jamal made mistakes because she drove him away. I looked directly at her. Then you should have no objection to the records. Liam stepped forward. I object to you turning my house into a circus. Your house is safe, Liam. Mine was the one you tried to transfer with a forged deed. The word forged moved through the room like a draft. Chloe turned slowly toward her husband. What deed? Liam did not answer her. He looked at me instead. You need to leave. I walked toward the smart television, mounted on the wall opposite the dining table. A slim media panel sat beneath it with an accessible USB port. Patricia shouted for security. One of the guards appeared at the edge of the room. Ma'am, I need you to step toward the foyer. I nodded. I will. I need 60 seconds to collect my property and show the family why Liam has been threatening my career. The guard hesitated. That hesitation was enough. I inserted the flash drive. The television screen went black. Then my first slide appeared. Jamal documented personal debt and transfer timeline. The room froze. I picked up the small presentation remote from my bag. As I crossed the foyer, I noticed framed photographs arranged along the wall. Jamal and Chloe as children, Patricia at charity galas, Liam receiving some corporate award. One photograph from our wedding remained near the staircase, but I had been cropped by the angle of the frame, so only Jamal was fully visible. It felt almost too symbolic. This family had been editing me out long before anyone tried to remove me from a bank account. A waiter approached with a tray. I declined the wine. I wanted a clear head. Across the room, Patricia whispered to one of her friends and nodded toward me. The woman looked me up and down with the curiosity people reserve for scandal. I met her gaze. She looked away first. That was when I understood the dinner was not only about saving Jamal. It was about restoring Patricia's social narrative before the financial facts became public. She needed me to look unstable. I needed only to remain still. Security can wait, I said. I have a presentation. Jamal reacted before anyone else could read the first line. Turn that off. He crossed the room so quickly his chair tipped backward. I stepped between him and the television. Do not touch me. He stopped. Not because he suddenly respected the boundary, because half the room had phones in their hands now, and Jamal understood cameras better than most people understood mirrors. He lowered his voice. You have no right to show my private finances to these people. You invited these people to hear that I stole from you and drove you out of the country. You made our finances the subject of the evening. I am correcting the specific story you brought into this room. Liam raised his phone. I am calling the police. My attorney knows exactly where I am, I said. Feel free. That did not stop him, but it changed the sound of the threat. Patricia tried another approach. Everyone, please ignore this disgusting spectacle. Maya is unstable. Her own firm removed her from an account. I clicked the remote. The first line enlarged. Sports betting outflows 9 months. Amounts appeared in a clean column 12,000, 18,000, 7,000, 522,000. The total at the bottom exceeded $300,000. The murmuring began. Jamal's face went hard. Those were investments. No, investments produce account statements, ownership interests, or lawful contracts. These payments went through processors tied to illegal betting activity. Several were followed by cash withdrawals and transfers to intermediaries. A man at the table leaned toward the screen. Is that why the Rome wire got stopped? I nodded. The Rome wire was the end of a pattern, not the beginning. Jamal pointed at me. She knew I had losses. She used that to take control of the accounts. I clicked again. A second slide showed the banking authorization document he had signed. There is your signature acknowledging the dual authorization threshold for international wires above $50,000. He stared at it. You tricked me into signing that. It was 4 pages. You initialed every page. The bank also sent the terms directly to your email. Patricia slammed her palm on the table. This is irrelevant. A wife should stand beside her husband when he is struggling. A wife is not required to finance a disappearance with a mistress. The room went silent again. Jamal's attempt to play wounded husband collapsed under the word mistress. He looked toward his mother. "You said this was about financial stress," one of the relatives murmured. "It was," Patricia snapped. "Olivia manipulated him." I clicked the remote once more. A photograph of the Rome flight itinerary appeared beside the apartment lease bearing Jamal's signature. He was not kidnapped. I said he purchased a first-class ticket. He co-signed Olivia's apartment. He texted me from the school pickup line that he was moving to Italy with her. I enlarged the text. "I'm moving to Italy with Olivia. I moved our money into my personal account. Good luck paying the bills." Jamal's own words filled the television. No narration could improve them. Chloe covered her mouth. Liam stopped dialing. Patricia looked around the room and realized people were no longer looking at me. They were looking at her son. Jamal tried to seize control. Fine, I left. I was desperate. Maya had controlled every dollar for years. She monitored me. She treated me like a criminal before I ever made a mistake. I pressed another button. A line graph showed his personal commissions flowing directly into accounts he controlled separate from our household structure. "You earned your own income, Jamal. You had personal accounts. You had business accounts. I did not stop you from spending your money. I stopped you from transferring money. You did not have authority to move after you announced you were abandoning the household." He laughed bitterly. "You always have a spreadsheet. You always create the spreadsheet." That line landed. The room felt different after it. I had spent 10 years hearing my work described as dull, obsessive, small. Now, the same discipline was the only reason his version of events could not survive 5 minutes. Patricia pointed toward Zuri's name on the next line of the account schedule. "Do not drag that child into this." I looked at her. I did not. Jamal did when he attempted to access her college account. His eyes snapped toward me. "Do not." The word was barely audible. I did not advance that slide yet. Not because I intended to protect him forever, because the sequence mattered. First, I wanted everyone to understand why he had fled. Not heartbreak, not abuse, not mental collapse, debt. I clicked to the final page of the first section. A red figure appeared beneath a list of creditors and payment processors. Estimated gambling exposure, $312, $480. Several people gasped. Jamal looked physically smaller. He had spent his adult life manufacturing the appearance of effortless success. The number on the screen stripped the polish away. I did not leave because I drove him out. I said he left because his gambling losses were closing in. He believed he could move money overseas, and he thought I would be too devastated to follow the trail. Jamal's face twisted. "You think this makes you powerful?" "No." I looked at the room. "It makes the story accurate." Liam moved toward the television. "Enough." I raised the remote. I paused on the slide showing Jamal's betting losses and looked directly at him. "Do you dispute these transactions?" He folded his arms. "I dispute your interpretation." "Good. Which transaction is wrong?" He did not answer. "Which date?" Silence. "Which amount?" Patricia interrupted. "This is harassment." "No." Patricia. "This is verification." I turned back to Jamal. "If one number is false, say which one." That was the moment the room understood the difference between accusation and evidence. Jamal could attack my motive. He could not identify a single false entry. I clicked to a supporting page, showing statements with account numbers partially redacted for privacy. I had removed information irrelevant to the discussion. Even in anger, I would not expose more than necessary. One of the business contacts near the end of the table leaned back slowly. He had spent years hearing Jamal joke that I was obsessed with details. Now details were the only people in the room not taking sides. "We have not reached your part yet." That stopped Liam more effectively than security could have. He stood beside the television. One hand still raised the muscles along his jaw tightening. Chloe looked between us. "What does she mean, your part?" "Your part?" "Nothing." Liam said the speed of the answer told everyone it was not nothing. Patricia tried to rescue him. "Maya is throwing random accusations at every person who supported Jamal. This is retaliation." I reached into my handbag and placed a certified copy of the county title record on the dining table. Then I placed the quick claim deed beside it. The paper made almost no sound. Still, the room noticed. "This is the document Liam brought to my driveway while Jamal was in the air," I said. "It claims Jamal transferred my home to Liam's holding company to settle a business debt." Chloe stared at her husband. "You went to Maya's house." Patricia answered for him. We were protecting Jamal's interests by ordering me and Zuri to leave in 24 hours. A woman near the end of the table whispered, "They did what Liam turned on me. I was given a notarized deed. I had every reason to believe it was legitimate. That may be the first sensible thing you have said, which is why I told you not to use it once I showed you the actual title." I pointed to the certified record. "My LLC has owned the property since before the marriage. Jamal was never on title. If you truly received the deed without knowing it was false, the rational response was to stop. Instead, you threatened my career hours later." I clicked the remote. His text filled the screen. "Give Jamal his money back, or you will not work in this city again." Liam's nostrils flared. That was not a threat. It was advice. The room reacted with low disbelief. I did not argue over the definition. I clicked again. A timeline appeared connecting calls from Patricia and Liam to the specific rumors repeated by Sterling representatives and referral partners. I had not recorded private calls illegally. I had simply documented who contacted whom and what allegations were repeated to me afterward. My firm removed me from a major account pending review because clients were told I abused confidential forensic access to punish my husband. Patricia folded her arms. "And maybe you did. The internal review can decide that. I welcome it." I looked at Liam. "But you put your demand in writing before the client reaction. That matters." He turned toward the security guard. "Are you seriously allowing this?" The guard looked at Chloe. It was her home, too. Chloe did not answer. Her attention remained fixed on the quitclaim deed. "Liam, did Jamal actually owe you money?" He hesitated. "Business money." "How much?" "This is not the time. You brought a deed to Maya's house and tried to remove her child." "How much?" His silence changed her face. I clicked the remote. The next slide showed public financing filings tied to Liam's company, a creditor schedule, and several transfers visible in Jamal's marital records. Liam had described himself for years as the disciplined one in the family. The sophisticated white executive Patricia liked to present as proof that Chloe had married up. The records told a messier story. His company had significant debt. One affiliate had been sued for non-payment. Another had pledged assets twice. Money had moved between Jamal and Liam at moments that aligned with Jamal's gambling losses. "That does not prove every transfer was illegal," I said. "I am not going to label something criminal just because it looks ugly, but it does prove that the two men who told everyone I was financially unstable were moving money between heavily stressed accounts while trying to take property neither one owned." Jamal erupted. "Liam was helping me." Liam spun toward him. "Shut up! Too late!" Everyone heard it. Jamal had just admitted the financial relationship. Patricia stood. "This presentation is over." I blocked her path to the television without touching her. "Not yet." She raised her voice. "You have humiliated enough people." I thought about Zuri's college fund. "No." I said we have not reached the humiliation yet. Jamal looked at me for the first time all evening. Fear replaced anger. "Maya." I clicked the remote. The screen went dark for 2 seconds. Then a new title appeared. "Olivia Payment History." Chloe stopped breathing. Liam's face drained of color. I looked directly at her. "You think Jamal's affair was the tragedy in this family?" I raised the remote. Chloe picked up her hands shook as she read. "Liam," she said, "this says Jamal transferred Maya's house to your company. He did, but she says he never owned it. She is twisting paperwork." I opened the county record on my phone and placed it beside the deed. Chloe compared the parcel number herself. I watched the exact second loyalty collided with literacy. She did not need me to explain. The owner names were different. The acquisition date predated my marriage. Jamal's signature appeared on a line where the legal owner should have signed. Chloe looked at Liam. "Why did you not check this?" He snapped. "Because Jamal told me it was his. You manage corporate transactions for a living." The question was devastating because it came from his wife, not me. Liam looked toward Jamal. "You said the deed was clean," Jamal muttered. "Something about family ownership." I let them argue. The document had finally started doing what evidence does best. It made people question the person standing beside them. Let's talk about who Olivia really is. No one moved. Even Patricia remained frozen between the table and the television. The first Olivia slide contained no photographs, only dates. That was deliberate. I did not want the room distracted by a face. I wanted them to look at the money. 3 years before Jamal signed Olivia's apartment lease, a company controlled by Liam began making recurring payments to a property management entity connected to the same address. The amounts were consistent: rent, utilities, one furniture purchase, then travel reimbursements. Chloe stared at the screen. "What is that?" Liam answered too quickly. "Vendor payments." I clicked. The underlying memo descriptions appeared. The first said executive housing. The second said retention. The third contained Olivia's initials. Chloe looked at him. "Who is she to you?" He did not answer. I spoke carefully. "I found these records in the tax and household files Jamal stored on our shared system, then matched them to public entity filings and the lease information connected to Olivia. I did not access Liam's private bank account. I cannot tell you every detail of their relationship from a spreadsheet." Liam seized on that. "Exactly. You cannot prove anything." I looked at Chloe. "No, but I can show you that Liam was financing Olivia's life before Jamal's affair started, and that the payments changed after Jamal became involved with her." I clicked again. The timeline shifted. Liam's company payments decreased. Jamal's payments increased. A hotel charge appeared during a conference Liam had attended. A travel reimbursement carried Olivia's name. Then came a transfer memo from Jamal's tax file settlement advance. L affiliate. Chloe stood her chair scraped across the hardwood. "Liam," he raised both hands. "This is being manipulated." "Then explain it." I did not say the next words. Chloe did. "Were you sleeping with her?" The room contracted around that question. Liam looked at Jamal. Jamal looked at the floor. That was answer enough for Chloe, but she still demanded the words. "Were you sleeping with Olivia before Jamal?" Liam's face hardened. It was complicated. The sound that came out of Chloe was not quite a laugh. Complicated. She walked toward him. "You let me sit with her at that charity event." Liam's eyes flashed. "Lower your voice. You brought her around me." Patricia stepped forward. "Chloe, darling, this is not the place." Chloe turned on her mother. "Did you know?" Patricia recoiled. "Of course not," Jamal muttered. "Mom knew she existed." Patricia snapped toward him. "Do not drag me into this." The family unity fractured exactly where the money said it would. I clicked to the next slide. There was no sensational label, just a comparison of dates. Liam payments stop. Jamal payments begin. Rome flight purchased. Chloe looked at Jamal. "Did Liam give her to you?" The question was ugly, but the arrangement had been ugly. Jamal shook his head. "It was not like that." "Then what was it like?" He rubbed his face. "Olivia and Liam were over," he said. "Liam introduced us after things between them became dangerous for his marriage. He said she knew too much about him, that keeping her apartment paid and keeping her happy would keep old messages from surfacing. He was tired of carrying the cost. I started seeing her, and then I started paying instead." The admission chilled the room. Liam had not merely known Olivia before Jamal. He had pushed her into Jamal's orbit because transferring the relationship also transferred the financial burden and the risk of exposure. Liam exploded. "You chased her and you paid her for 2 years." Jamal fired back. Chloe slapped Liam. The sound cracked through the room. Someone dropped a fork. Liam stumbled half a step, then looked at her with an expression stripped of every social mask. "Do not ever touch me again. You lied to me for years. You benefited from everything I built." Chloe's face twisted. "Everything you built with what money? The company is drowning." That line came from the public filings on my screen. Liam glared at me. "You poisoned her." "No, your records did." He started toward me. The security guard moved between us. That ended the physical approach, but not the collapse. Jamal began shouting at Liam for setting him up with Olivia. Liam shouted back that no one forced Jamal to gamble. Patricia screamed at both men to stop humiliating the family. Chloe demanded to know what else everyone had hidden. I stood beside the television and watched the mythology die. For years, Patricia had organized this family around status. Jamal was the charismatic son. Liam was the wealthy corporate in-law. Chloe had the enviable marriage. I was the dull accountant. One set of transaction dates had reversed all 4 roles. I clicked off the Olivia slide. Patricia moved toward the hallway. I noticed immediately she was trying to leave before the final document. "Patricia." She stopped. "I have nothing to say to you. You do not need to say anything." I reached for the audio file. Chloe asked me to go back 1 slide. I did. She stared at the earliest payment. That was the year Liam told me he was traveling constantly because of the merger. Liam's face tightened. It was business. Was Olivia business? He said nothing. Chloe looked at another date. This was our anniversary weekend. The room became painfully still. I had not noticed that connection because I had never lived Chloe's calendar. That was why financial evidence can mean different things to different people. To me, the date was a transaction point. To her, it was a memory suddenly poisoned. I felt a brief flash of guilt for exposing it publicly. Then I remembered the dinner had been built to destroy my credibility in public. I had not chosen the stage. I had chosen not to lie on it. Chloe's voice dropped. "You left dinner early that night," Liam said. "Chloe, stop." She looked at him. "No, I think I am finally starting." "You already did." Patricia turned slowly. The room was still in chaos, but the moment she saw the audio icon on the television, her face changed. Jamal saw it too. "Maya, do not play that." Chloe wiped tears from her face with the heel of her hand. "Play it." Patricia pointed at me. "This is illegal. The recording was not made by me." I said it was a voicemail Jamal saved on a shared household device. My attorney preserved it because it directly referenced an attempt to access Zuri's protected account that silenced even Liam. I pressed play. Patricia's voice filled the dining room. "Move the college money before Maya starts asking questions. You are Zuri's father. You can replenish it later. Get yourself settled first. Then deal with the child account after Italy. Maya always figures things out eventually, so do it before she has time to stop you." The file ended. No music, no narration, no one spoke. Jamal looked at his mother. Patricia looked at the floor. One of the older relatives pushed her chair back. "You told him to take from the child." Patricia's mouth opened. "It was not theft. He is her father. The account is legally protected for Zuri." I said Jamal did not have unilateral withdrawal authority. He attempted access anyway. Patricia recovered a piece of her usual aggression. "I was trying to help my son get away from a toxic marriage with his daughter's education money. He would have paid it back." Jamal laughed bitterly with what Patricia snapped toward him. "Do not you dare turn on me after everything I have done." The room erupted again. This time the target was not me. A cousin asked Patricia how long she had known about Italy. Another relative wanted to know whether she knew about Olivia. One of her country club friends quietly collected her handbag. Liam accused Jamal of saving the voicemail to protect himself. Jamal accused Liam of arranging the false deed. Chloe stood in the center of the room, shaking furious at both men. I unplugged nothing. I let the screen remain on the account summary. Facts do not need to shout after they arrive. Patricia tried to regain control. Everyone is overreacting. This was a family matter. An older man at the table looked at her with disgust. "You made it everybody's matter when you called us here to shame Maya." That was the first public defense anyone had offered me all evening. I did not need it, but I felt it. Jamal moved toward me. "Give me the flash drive." "No, those are my private records. Some are records from joint accounts, some are public, and some relate directly to my property and my daughter's protected funds. The originals are preserved elsewhere." His eyes narrowed. "You already sent them somewhere." I said nothing. That was enough. He looked toward Liam. "What did you do with that deed?" Liam's voice went low. "Do not put this on me." Patricia started toward the foyer. I did not stop her this time. Then the first siren became audible through the tall front windows. Everyone paused. A second siren followed. Blue light flickered against the ceiling. Patricia froze. Liam's face changed completely. Jamal whispered, "What is that?" I removed the flash drive from the television. "I do not know exactly what action investigators decided to take tonight," I said. "I sent the records through council days ago. Whatever is coming through that door is not something I arranged in this room." Liam grabbed his phone. The gate intercom rang almost immediately. Chloe stared at the screen mounted near the kitchen entrance. Uniformed officers were visible beside two people in plain clothes. The house fell silent for the third time that night. Only this silence felt different. The first had been social shock. The second had been betrayal. This one was consequence. Liam backed away from the foyer. Patricia looked toward a side hall. Jamal's hands began to shake. I placed the flash drive back into my bag. "Security can stop waiting now," I said quietly. Patricia tried to explain the voicemail. "I did not mean steal it." "Then what did you mean by move the college money before Maya starts asking questions?" She looked around for an answer that would sound respectable. "Temporary liquidity." The phrase was so polished it almost made me laugh. That money was not liquidity. It was Zuri's future. Jamal rubbed both hands over his face. Mom, stop. Patricia turned on him. I was helping you. You were helping yourself feel like the family was still in control. The accusation came from Chloe. Patricia stared at her daughter. Do not join this. Why not? Chloe asked. Everybody else has been joining things without telling me for years. The room cracked again. For the first time, Chloe and I were not on opposite sides. We were simply two women looking at a family system that had used secrecy as glue. I did not mistake that shared moment for reconciliation, but I recognized it. The police are here. The front door opened after Chloe answered the intercom. Two local detectives entered first. Behind them were federal financial crimes, investigators carrying document folders rather than dramatic weapons. The contrast made the moment more frightening, not less. Paper had finally arrived to meet paper. One of the detectives asked for Liam by full name. His face hardened. I want my attorney. That is your right, the detective said. The second investigator asked for Jamal. Patricia stepped between them. There has been a misunderstanding. This is a domestic dispute. My son is a respected sports agent. The federal investigator looked at her. Ma'am, step aside. She did. Jamal stared at me. You called them here. I did not answer because the investigators were already speaking. They explained that the inquiry involved the attempted international transfer suspected misuse of client and business funds and records associated with the property document Liam had tried to use. They did not read the family a full case file. They did not need to. One detective produced a warrant. Liam went pale. Jamal backed into a chair. The room that had been arranged as his public restoration became the place where he lost control of the story forever. The investigator approached him. Jamal, turn around and place your hands behind your back. Patricia screamed. No. Jamal's expression collapsed. Mom. The word sounded young. For the first time that evening, he did not look like a man protecting an image. He looked like a son expecting his mother to fix something money could not reach. Patricia rushed toward the investigator and stopped only when warned not to interfere. This is because of her, she said, pointing at me. She has been manipulating the accounts for months. The investigator did not look at me. The warrant is based on financial records, bank compliance information, and evidence reviewed before tonight. That sentence mattered. No one could claim I had performed a dramatic slideshow and summoned handcuffs by applause. The process had already been moving. Jamal looked at me as the cuffs closed. Maya, tell them the transfer was ours. I met his eyes. It was not authorized. Tell them we were reconciling. You texted me from the airport that you were moving to Italy with Olivia. His face twisted. Think about Zuri. I have been thinking about Zuri since the school pickup line. He stopped speaking. Across the room, the detectives moved toward Liam. His response was different. He became technical. He insisted the deed had been provided by Jamal. He said he had never recorded it. He said his corporation was simply collecting a legitimate debt. The detective asked whether he had presented the document to me as proof that he owned the property. Liam hesitated. Chloe answered, I did. Every head turned. She was crying again, but her voice was clear. He brought it to Maya's house and told her to leave. Liam stared at his wife. Chloe, do not. She stepped away from him. I am done lying for people, the detective continued. He identified separate allegations involving corporate funds and document fraud that had arisen from the financial referral. Liam's attorney would have the opportunity to challenge every claim. Tonight, investigators had enough for custody under the warrants already issued. Liam's polished composure broke. He blamed Jamal. Jamal blamed the gambling network. Patricia blamed Olivia. No one blamed themselves. The cuffs closed around Liam's wrists. Chloe sat down hard. Patricia looked around the dining room for allies. The country club friend who had been gathering her purse was already moving toward the door. Another guest followed. Then another. People who had arrived to watch Maya be exposed did not want their photographs associated with an active financial crimes arrest. Patricia called after them. You are leaving me. No one answered. One woman paused at the foyer. You told us Maya stole from Jamal. Patricia looked toward the television where the blank input screen now reflected the room. This is not what it looks like. The woman shook her head. That sentence is the reason I am leaving. The door closed behind her. Within minutes, half the guests had gone. The social standing Patricia had treated like an asset disappeared faster than money in a bad account. The investigators escorted Jamal and Liam toward the door. Jamal stopped beside me. He looked exhausted, not angry, not charming, just empty. "How long did you know?" he asked. "About Olivia." He nodded. 3 months. His eyes closed. "Why did you not say anything?" "Because I wanted to know whether you would stop on your own." He gave a broken laugh, and I did not. "No." The investigator guided him forward. As he crossed the foyer, I remembered the text. "Good luck paying the bills." I felt no need to repeat it. Consequences had better wording. Liam passed next. Chloe did not look at him. Patricia stood near the dining table in a room full of abandoned plates and empty chairs. I retrieved my handbag. One of the federal investigators asked me to remain available for follow-up through counsel. Of course. Then I turned toward Chloe. "I am sorry you learned about Olivia this way." She looked at me with red eyes. "I am sorry I believed them about you." I nodded once. That was enough for tonight. Patricia said my name as I reached the foyer. "Maya." I stopped. "You destroyed this family." I looked back at the room. "No, Patricia." As the investigators secured the 2 men, I noticed Patricia's phone vibrating on the table. Message after message appeared on the lock screen. People leaving the dinner. People asking what happened. People canceling plans. Her social world was updating in real time. She reached for the device. One of the investigators asked everyone to leave relevant devices untouched until they clarified whether any were subject to preservation requests. Patricia pulled her hand back as if the phone were hot. That image stayed with me. A woman who had spent years measuring power by who returned her calls, suddenly afraid to touch the device that contained all of them. Chloe stood near the staircase, arms wrapped around herself. I wanted to tell her she would be fine. I did not know that, so I told her something smaller and truer. "Call your own lawyer, not Liam's." She looked at me. "Why are you helping me?" "Helping me because his consequences do not need to become your legal mistakes." She nodded slowly. It was the first advice she accepted from me without contempt. I documented it. The arrests did not end the case. They only made it public. By Monday morning, the financial crimes investigation had split into separate tracks. The attempted Rome transfer sat with federal investigators because of the international movement of funds and the receiving account under review. Jamal's gambling-related transfers were being traced through payment processors. Liam's business records were being examined for the movement of money through affiliated companies, and the forged deed had been referred to the local authorities responsible for property and document fraud. My role was narrower than Patricia wanted anyone to believe. I provided records. I answered questions. I identified which accounts were mine, which were joint, which belonged to my LLC, and which transactions I had no authority to interpret beyond the documents in front of me. That discipline protected me. The managing partner at my firm called 2 days after the dinner. "I assume you have seen the news." I had a local business site had posted a photograph of Jamal and Liam entering a federal building with their attorneys. The article referred to an ongoing investigation and carefully avoided declaring either man guilty. I did the same. The managing partner cleared his throat. "Our internal review is almost complete. Almost no evidence shows you used firm systems to access family records. No client database was queried. No proprietary tool was used outside an authorized engagement." I waited. He continued. "The allegations from Liam appear to have been false. Appear Maya. I am trying to be precise." "Good. Keep trying," he sighed. "Sterling has asked about you again." I looked out my office window. I was working remotely while the review closed. My desk at home had become command central for both my clients and my divorce counsel. "What did you tell them?" "That the review found no professional misconduct and the account they have not decided." The old version of me might have been grateful just to be cleared. The current version heard the difference. My firm had believed years of performance were worth suspending because Patricia and Liam had access to wealthy ears. Even if Sterling came back, I would not forget how quickly reputation had outranked evidence. I thanked him for the update. Then my attorney called Jamal's counsel wants to discuss temporary parenting arrangements. My chest tightened. Everything else was money. This was Zuri. What is he asking for? Video contact now. In-person visits only after release conditions are clear. He is not asking to take her out of state. That was more reasonable than I expected. Does Zuri want to speak to him? She has asked about him. Then arrange a supervised video call. My attorney paused. You are separating the father from the defendant. I am trying to. That evening, Zuri sat at the kitchen table with my tablet propped against a fruit bowl. Jamal appeared on the screen from a controlled setting with his attorney nearby. Daddy. His face changed completely. Hey, princess. She told him about the spelling test. She told him about choir practice. She asked if Italy was pretty. He looked at me through the screen before answering. I did not enjoy it very much. Zuri laughed. You should have stayed home. I turned my face away for a second. Children have no interest in preserving adult dignity. The call lasted 5 minutes. He did not discuss the case. He did not criticize me. When it ended, Zuri hugged me around the waist. Is Dad in trouble? Yes. Is he bad? I crouched to her level. Your dad made serious choices. That does not mean you have to stop loving him. She thought about that. Do you love him? The question cut cleanly. I love who I hoped he was. That was the only answer I had. Later, after Zuri slept, I opened the case update. Investigators had expanded the inquiry beyond the Rome wire. Records suggested Jamal had used funds moving through Liam-linked entities to cover debts and conceal gambling losses. The attempted use of Zur's college account had been documented, but had failed because of the account protections. The phrase embezzlement appeared for the first time in a formal summary, not as a conviction, as an allegation under investigation. I read the word carefully. Jamal had always joked that numbers were my cage. Now numbers were the only thing separating accusation from proof. I closed the document. Outside rain tapped lightly against the window. The investigation also forced me to review my own choices with uncomfortable honesty. I had known about the affair for 3 months. I had known about gambling losses. I had known Jamal was moving money. Had I stayed quiet because I was building a case or because part of me wanted to watch him walk into the trap? The answer was both. That did not make the evidence false. It did remind me that strategy can become vengeance if you stop examining your motive. I discussed it with my attorney. She said you protected assets you had a right to protect. You documented conduct. You did not force the transfer. I know, but I looked toward Zuri's room. But I never want my daughter to learn that being smart means becoming cold. My attorney's expression softened. Then teach her the difference between a boundary and a punishment. That became the lesson I carried forward. A boundary protects what belongs to you. A punishment exists to make someone suffer. The law could decide consequences. My job was to keep the line between those things visible. The federal case also brought an unexpected practical problem: taxes. Jamal's gambling losses, hidden transfers, and attempted movement of household funds affected returns we had filed together. I could not simply assume every prior filing was contaminated, and I could not amend anything based on suspicion. So, I hired an independent tax professional who had never worked for my firm and had no relationship with Jamal. We reviewed 3 years of returns line by line. That process was humbling. Some items I thought looked sinister were ordinary. A commission adjustment I had flagged turned out to be a legitimate delayed payment. One foreign transaction that bothered me was properly reported. Not every ugly marriage produces fraud in every column. That mattered because it reminded me to resist confirmation bias. If I only searched for evidence that proved Jamal was dishonest, I could become just as unreliable as Patricia, searching for evidence that I was cruel. The audit found real problems too. Several deductions tied to Liam's entities lacked adequate support. One gambling-related transfer had been mischaracterized. We prepared corrected information for counsel and the appropriate tax process rather than using it as another threat. When my attorney reviewed the work, she smiled. You know, most people in your position would be thrilled to find another weapon. I am tired of weapons. What do you want instead? A clean life. The answer surprised me because I meant it. I did not want Jamal to wake up miserable every morning. I wanted to wake up without calculating what he might do next. My firm formally closed its internal review the same week. The final memorandum was only 2 pages. No misuse of confidential systems, no unauthorized client access, no ethics violation. The document should have felt like vindication. Instead, I read the line stating that my removal from Sterling had been a reasonable interim business decision and understood that institutions apologize differently from people. They document resolution without admitting fear made the first decision. I saved the memo anyway, not because I planned to sue, because professional reputation is an asset, and assets deserve records. I sent a copy to my personal file, another to my attorney, and then returned to work. For the first time since the smear began, I did not wonder what Liam had told anyone. His story now had to compete with an audit trail. For the first time in days, the house felt quiet enough to hear it. Liam's fall was less emotional and more administrative. His clients did not wait for a verdict before protecting themselves. 3 firms placed his company relationships under review. A bank suspended a credit facility after learning that corporate accounts were part of a financial crimes investigation. The forged deed became its own disaster because it was so simple compared with the offshore money. There was a real house, a real owner, a false grantor, a document Liam had physically presented to me while demanding possession. His defense was that Jamal gave it to him and represented it as valid. That might matter in court. It did not erase the fact that I had shown him the county record before he left my driveway. My attorney preserved the exact time I sent him the certified title record. After that moment, any attempt to use the deed became much harder to describe as innocent reliance. Patricia called me from 3 different numbers. I blocked the first 2. On the third, I answered because my attorney had advised me to preserve certain communications. She did not say hello. "You have to help, Liam. Why Chloe has no one, Chloe has herself. Do not be cruel." I almost admired the word. Cruelty in Patricia's vocabulary meant refusing to absorb the cost of someone else's behavior. She lowered her voice. "If Liam goes down, Chloe's social life is destroyed. Her marriage is already over. People are talking. People were talking when you told them I was financially abusive. That was different." "Of course it was." Patricia began crying. At least I think she did. The sound was familiar, but I had learned not to confuse performance with remorse. "Maya, I was protecting my son. You advised him to take money from his daughter. I did not know he would actually do it. You left a voicemail telling him to do it before I noticed." She went silent. There was no elegant way around her own voice. I ended the call. By the end of the week, the social consequences were moving faster than the legal ones. Patricia was removed from a charity committee pending review of the family scandal. The country club did not revoke her membership outright, but several women stopped returning her calls. One photograph from the Sunday dinner circulated privately. Patricia standing beside the table while investigators escorted Jamal through the foyer. She had spent decades curating proximity to wealth and respectability. Now the same network treated her as reputational risk. I did not celebrate it. Social exile has no line item on a balance sheet, but it is still a kind of loss. Chloe requested to meet me. We chose a quiet cafe during school hours. She arrived without Liam, without designer sunglasses, without the brittle superiority she had inherited from Patricia. "I am filing for divorce," she said before the coffee arrived. I nodded. She looked at me. "You knew about Olivia before Sunday. I knew the money touched her before Jamal did. I did not know every detail of their relationship. Why did you not tell me privately?" The question was fair. "Because your husband was helping my husband move money, threatening my career, and standing in my driveway with a false deed. I did not know whether you were involved." Pain crossed her face. "I was not. I know that now." She looked down at her hands. "I believed him over you. So did a lot of people. I am sorry. I accepted the apology without turning it into instant intimacy. Forgiveness and access are different decisions." Chloe asked whether I thought Liam would go to prison. I told her the truth. "I do not know. Charges are not convictions." She nodded slowly. Then she asked the question beneath all the others. Was any of it real? Her marriage, her life, the image. I could not audit love. I reached across the table and touched her hand once. "That part is yours to decide." When I left the cafe, my attorney called. Liam had been formally charged in connection with the property document and separate corporate fraud allegations. Jamal's case was also moving forward. The legal system was finally doing what my family had refused to do. Chloe also asked whether I planned to use the Olivia evidence in her divorce. "That is your lawyer's decision," I said. "I will provide copies of records I can lawfully share if requested through proper process." She looked surprised. "You are not going to hold it over me." "Why would I?" "Because I was awful to you. That is not a legal strategy." A sad smile crossed her face. Patricia would make it one. Patricia and I are not the same person. Saying it aloud felt important. This story could easily have turned me into the thing I hated. Someone who discovered leverage, and then used it simply because it was available. I refused. Chloe had to build her own case. I had to build mine. The fact that both cases touched the same dishonest men did not merge our lives. That separation was another kind of freedom. Patricia's collapse remained mostly social, but she kept trying to turn it into a financial emergency. She sent messages saying she could not afford Jamal's lawyers. She asked whether I would release family funds. There were no family funds under my control for that purpose. She asked whether I would loan Chloe money. Chloe had not asked me. She asked whether I would sell my house and give Jamal his share. The house had never been his. Each request revealed how little she understood ownership despite spending a lifetime worshipping wealth. Money to Patricia belonged to whoever had the strongest family claim to demand it. I answered only through counsel. No, no, no. Eventually, the request stopped. Not because she accepted my boundaries emotionally, because every route around them had closed. That distinction taught me something useful. A boundary does not require the other person to agree. It requires you to enforce the consequence consistently. Patricia could believe I was selfish for the rest of her life. She simply could no longer make that belief expensive for me. Chloe and I never became instant friends. That would have been dishonest. We spoke occasionally because our legal situations overlapped, but I did not invite her into my home or tell her every detail of Zuri's life. Trust once absent does not appear because two people discover they were harmed by the same man. She respected that. One afternoon, she sent a short message. I used to think your distance meant you believed you were better than us. I answered after an hour. My distance meant I was tired of being judged. She replied with one sentence. I understand that now. It was not reconciliation. It was the first truthful exchange we had ever had. Sometimes that is enough to stop a family pattern from repeating. Separating story from evidence. The divorce did not happen in one dramatic afternoon. It happened through paper, temporary orders, financial disclosures, parenting evaluations, settlement drafts, the slow procedural dismantling of a 10-year marriage. 3 months after the Sunday dinner, I entered a courtroom with my attorney and sat across from Jamal for the first time since his arrest, without a dining table in Airport or a family audience between us. He wore a plain dark suit. No designer watch, no performance. His federal case was still pending, and his release conditions limited travel and financial activity. His criminal attorney sat behind him. Our family law lawyers had spent weeks negotiating an uncontested path through the divorce because neither side benefited from turning Zuri into another battlefield. The judge reviewed the settlement. The Buckhead house remained mine because my LLC had owned it before the marriage. My separate business and recovery accounts remained mine. Jamal retained whatever lawful separate assets remained after the criminal and creditor processes. There was no fantasy where I won everything. There was simply documentation showing what belonged to whom. Custody required more care. The court approved sole legal and primary physical custody to me, with Jamal receiving structured contact subject to the conditions of his criminal case and future review. I did not ask the court to erase him as a father. I asked the court to keep Zuri stable. That distinction mattered. When the judge asked whether Jamal understood the agreement, he stood. Yes, Your Honor. Do you enter it voluntarily after consultation with counsel? He looked at me, then at the judge. Yes. The divorce was not final, because the judge hated him. It was final because the marriage was over and the evidence had removed the last incentive to pretend otherwise. After the hearing, I waited in the hallway while my attorney discussed filing details. Jamal approached with his counsel a few steps behind. Maya, I turned. He looked older. Not by years, by consequences. Can I ask you one thing? I nodded. How did you know to look at the accounts? The question surprised me because the answer had been in our house for 10 years. You always said my job was boring. He gave a tired half smile. I did. You should have paid attention. The smile disappeared. I noticed the flower charge, then the betting transfers, then the hidden credit. After that, I did what I do for clients every day. I followed the money until the story stopped changing. He looked toward the courtroom doors. Did you ever think about warning me every night for 3 months? Why did you not? Because a warning would have told me whether you could lie better. I wanted to know whether you would stop. He swallowed. I was scared. So was I. No. He shook his head. I mean about the debt. I thought Italy would buy time and Zuri's college money. His eyes closed. I was going to replace it with what he did not answer. That silence was the final accounting between us. The deputy assigned to his next appearance approached from the far end of the hall. Jamal looked at me again. "Tell Zuri I love her. You can tell her on your scheduled call." He nodded. As he turned away, he stopped. "Maya, yes, I am sorry." The apology was quiet. Not a speech, not a request. I had imagined hearing those words during the worst nights of our marriage. Now that they arrived, they did not change the numbers. "I believe you are sorry now," I said. His face tightened. That was not forgiveness. It was not cruelty either. It was accuracy. I watched him walk down this corridor. My attorney joined me. "How do you feel?" I looked at the signed settlement in her hand. Like I finally closed a file I kept open too long. She smiled. Outside the courthouse, the city moved as if nothing monumental had happened. Cars stopped at lights. People carried coffee. A woman argued into a headset. I stood on the steps and breathed. My future did not feel triumphant. It felt quiet. The settlement also required a parenting communication structure. No midnight accusations, no messages through Patricia, no financial disputes, inside calls with Zuri. Jamal and I would communicate through a documented parenting platform while the criminal case remained unresolved. It sounded clinical. Clinical was exactly what we needed. The first week, Jamal sent him a message complaining that the system made him feel monitored. I replied once. "It makes both of us accountable." He never complained again. Zuri adjusted faster than either of us. She cared about predictable calls, school pickup, and whether her father remembered the name of her choir song. Children do not need the illusion of a perfect family. They need adults who stop making them responsible for maintaining one. There was one asset Jamal asked about repeatedly during the settlement, my retirement account. He believed years of marriage automatically entitled him to everything inside it. The lawyers separated premarital contributions, marital contributions, and legally divisible portions according to the applicable rules. The result was not the dramatic sweep either of us might have imagined. Some value was marital, some was separate. The same was true for certain household assets. We divided what the law required. I kept what the law and records showed was mine. That ordinary fairness felt almost radical after months of family members treating property as something the loudest person could claim. Jamal eventually stopped arguing once his own lawyer explained the numbers. I watched him sign the final page and realized how much of our marriage had been built on his assumption that I would eventually become too tired to verify things. He had mistaken exhaustion for consent. The divorce gave me a new rule. Never sign peace just because conflict is tiring. Read the page, understand the number, then decide. Before the final custody order, the court asked for a practical plan if Jamal remained unavailable. School pickup, medical consent, emergency contacts, travel permissions, the ordinary infrastructure of childhood. I updated every form, removed Jamal from permissions he could not currently exercise, kept him listed where the law and parenting order required, added no dramatic notes. A school administrator glanced at the stack and said, "That must be difficult." "It is administrative," I replied. She smiled gently. "Sometimes administrative is how we survive difficult." I carried that sentence home. My career had taught me to respect systems because systems keep emotion from deciding everything at once. For Zuri, structure became kindness. That was better. 6 months after Jamal sent me the message that was supposed to end my life, my former managing partner asked me to lunch. I almost declined. Curiosity won. We met at a restaurant downtown where finance executives like to pretend ordering salads counted as privacy. He arrived early. That alone told me the power dynamic had changed. "Maya," he said, standing as I approached. "You look well." "I am well," we ordered. He spent the first 10 minutes discussing the firm's year, the sterling account, and the difficulty of recruiting senior forensic talent. Then he placed a folder on the table. "Partnership offer." I did not open it. He noticed. "At least look at the economics." I smiled. "You took me off sterling because wealthy people told a story about my marriage. We had risk concerns. You had no work concerns. That is fair. You suspended my bonus while deciding whether gossip outweighed my record." His expression tightened. "The review cleared you. After the damage," he folded his hands. "You also became the public face of one of the most complex private fraud referrals this city has seen in years. Clients respect what you did." That sentence told me everything. They wanted me back now because the same scandal that made me dangerous had made me marketable. I opened my handbag and placed my own folder beside his. He looked confused. I incorporated 3 months ago, I said. Inside was the launch package for my new boutique forensic accounting firm. No giant logo, no rented prestige, just a focused practice serving high, net worth women founders and family offices that needed asset protection, fraud review, and financial clarity before a crisis destroyed their choices. I had already signed my first 4 clients. 2 were women leaving marriages where they had been told they were too emotional to understand money. 1 was a founder recovering control of a company from a dishonest partner. The 4th wanted a preventive audit because she had watched my case and realized that love was not an internal control. The managing partner stared at the document. You are leaving. I already left. He leaned back. I suppose there is nothing I can offer. You can offer the next woman due process before reputation management. That ended the lunch. I walked out lighter than I entered. My own office opened 2 weeks later in a renovated brick building with tall windows and a small team I chose carefully. I did not name the firm after revenge. I named it after precision. Clients came because I understood something. Many financial institutions still struggled to explain. Money is rarely just money in a family. It is access, control, silence, fear, sometimes escape, sometimes protection. My work was helping women understand which was which before someone else decided for them. One bright afternoon, I left the office early to pick up Zuri from school. I had replaced the SUV, Jamal remembered, with a new car purchased in my name, paid from my own account selected, because Zuri liked the panoramic roof. She climbed into the back seat carrying a poster board covered in glitter. Mom, do not bend it. It is my solar system. I treated it with the seriousness of a merger agreement. Understood. We pulled away from the curb. At a light near an older apartment complex on the edge of Buckhead, traffic slowed beside a moving truck. A woman in a cream coat stood on the sidewalk directing 2 movers toward a stack of boxes. Patricia. The country club wrap was gone. The pearl necklace was gone. The enormous house she once used as evidence of superiority was no longer part of her life. After Jamal's legal expenses, the collapse of several family financial arrangements, and the social cost of the investigation, she had downsized. She looked up. Our eyes met through the windshield. For 1 second, the old expression returned. Disapproval. Then something else replaced it. Recognition, not affection, not apology. Recognition that I was no longer available for her judgment. The light turned green. I did not roll down the window. I did not wave. I drove. Zuri was explaining why Saturn was better than Jupiter. I listened. At the next intersection, she leaned forward. Mom, yes. Are we okay? I looked at her in the mirror. We are more than okay. She smiled. Good. Can we get ice cream? That depends. Did the solar system budget for it? She groaned dramatically. You make everything about numbers. I laughed so hard I had to slow down. Maybe Jamal had been right about one thing. Numbers were everywhere in my life, but they were not boring. They were boundaries. They were evidence. They were the reason no one could steal my house, my daughter's future, my career, or my reality. And then convinced me I had imagined the loss. When Jamal left for Italy, he thought he had taken the money and the power with him. What he actually took was the last excuse I had to keep protecting people who were willing to destroy me. I did not need to ruin him. I needed to stop rescuing him. That was the sweetest part of the revenge. The moment I stopped carrying consequences that belonged to other people, my life became mine again. If you have ever had to protect your peace from someone who mistook your trust for weakness, tell me in the comments. And if this story reminded you that quiet preparation can be stronger than loud revenge, subscribe and stay with me for the next one. Zuri turned the music up. I put on my sunglasses. My new firm kept one rule from the first day. No client was allowed to use us as a revenge machine. We would trace assets, preserve evidence, build controls, support counsel. We would not sabotage businesses, invent fraud, or weaponized private information just because a client had been betrayed. I wrote the rule myself after living through the temptation. One woman sitting across from me during our first month asked, "Can you ruin him?" I answered, "No, but I can show you exactly what is yours, exactly what happened, and exactly what your lawyer needs to protect you," she cried.